Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to work on something a little bit different to what you're used to me creating. Normally I would share videos on my resin pieces. However, this is not all I do. I do actually work on many other mediums like this one, which is acrylic paint. So I'm starting out with a colourful background, which I'm then going to photograph and take into Photoshop so that I can superimpose the reference photo that I have purchased from deposit photos over the top, so that I then have a basis on which to start my painting. So as you can see, I've just put blobs of colour onto the canvas, and just using a sponge I'm dabbing the colours, the paint, and moving it out to the outer edge. I do decide later on in the painting to change the background up a little bit, but this is a good basis for my reference photo, so I'm going to continue with this before moving on to photographing it. Now initially I started out with fluoro paint because I wanted it to be very vibrant. However, as the painting progresses, I then change my mind on the fluoro colours, and then I go back and add some more colour to the background. But for the purposes of creating the reference photo, this is fine. So this is a good way of working with your colours to create your reference photo. So start with putting colour down on your canvas, and then we can build on that for the rest of your painting. I purchased this reference photo from depositphotos.com, and as you can see, it's a great reference photo for my painting. I then photographed the colours and then superimposed this reference photo over the top, and as you can see, the colours shine through, which is a good basis for my painting. I then sketched the image over the top of the painting. Now in some areas it was quite difficult to see where my sketch was, and I did make a few mistakes with the eyes. I positioned them in the wrong place. So the beauty with acrylic painting is that you can then go back over and fix these areas when you see that it's not working. Now one tip that I can give you is to photograph your work as you're working on this, because when you take a photograph, that's when you can see quite often when things are in the wrong place. Because my canvas is actually sitting on an angle on my desk, and my reference photo is also on an angle, so when I came to do this I was looking at it from the wrong angle, and so my eye ended up in the wrong position. So I'm just blocking out colour, the white at the moment, on where I'm going to be positioning things, and this is, like I say, a good time you can see where things are and whether they're working properly. So this eye is completely in the wrong place, but I will come back later and fix it. I end up fixing it twice. I put it in the wrong place twice, but like I say, that's the beauty of taking photographs of your work as you're progressing, because then you can see what needs fixing, if at all. Now I'm blocking in some of the white to block out the colour behind, but I will come back and put some of those colours back in once we get the basic shape of the dog in place. So when blocking in colour, you don't need to concern yourself over adding detail at this stage. We're just looking to get the shapes right and some of the tonal values correct as well. So we're just going to block that in over the top and then just work on our values. So while working on this, I realised that I didn't like the angle of the camera, so I then come back and change things around a little bit. I got a stand to attach my camera to, that I could have a more overhead view of this painting. Now that my camera is overhead, I can start seeing where things are working and where things are not right, and that's when I noticed that the eye wasn't in the right place, and so I come back and alter this again and move it over. And because I can view it from the viewfinder above the painting, I can see where things are not right, and it saved me from having to take more photographs in this particular instance. And so now I'm blocking in more of the colour into the dog face itself. So although I'd painted the colour away underneath, I'm now coming back in and adding more of that colour back in. And I'm mixing it with a touch of white so that we've got the opacity right on those colours also. I would also like your opinion on the speed of this video, because I'm trying to cram 7 hours worth of video footage into something that's it's not too long, and because obviously a lot of it is quite samey, it's just paint going down on a canvas. So I'd like your feedback on how you would like me to proceed with this kind of video. Normally you're used to me doing resin videos, which that's generally like an hour's worth of video in maybe between 5 and 20 minutes long, whereas I'm trying to cram 7 hours worth into maybe 15-20 minutes worth of video footage for you. So I would love your feedback on that, on how you would like me to proceed with these videos. So once I've blocked in majority of the colours, I'll then come back and start adding some extra detail and texture to the animal. Now I'm working in smaller areas at a time, referring to my reference photo for the colours, because our minds want to use what we think we know what the colours should be. So adding these colours, the different colours, it can trick your mind a little bit. So by working in smaller areas and not looking at the whole picture, when you step back you can then see the piece starting to come together. So I recommend just working in small areas at a time. And as you can see, I'm just using a fine liner brush to put in some of the details of the fur and just giving this some extra highlights and give it a feeling of texture. So as well as using the paint, I'm also using brush pens to create some of the finer detail also. So this means that you don't necessarily need to just use one medium when painting. You can easily come back in and use some brush pens or markers, whatever you feel will get the job done. And once I've finished an area, I then move on to another area and concentrate there. If you feel that you're starting to rush through and try and get as much done as possible, then that's time to have a break and then come back to it later. So if I find that I start trying to rush the details, I'll then either leave it for that day and then come back another day and start working on it again, because I find that when I first start working on a piece, I am more deliberate and take my time on the details. So having a break is fine. So this, although is 7 hours, I didn't do it all in one day. I done it over several days. So after working on the top section of the painting, I decided that I liked the background better, where it had a lot more colour. So I'm now going back and altering the background. So I'm still keeping in with the colour scheme of it, but I'm just adding more paint and adding a bit more depth to the painting, because I want the dog to stand out a little bit more. I felt it was just looking a little bit lost. So by adding more detail to the background, it means that the dog is going to stand out a lot more and is going to pop off the canvas. It was also at this point that I decided to get rid of the fluoro background and cover it with similar colours but just not fluoro colours, and just added those over the top to just get rid of those really bright colours, because I felt I didn't need the really bright colours because I didn't want the background to take away from the finished piece of the dog. Now that I'm happy with the background, it's now time to come back and work on the details again. So now it's a case of just going in, checking that the colours are working well, and start adding some of the highlights and lowlights to the fur to help it pop, to give it some movement. So while I'm waiting for the face to dry a bit before I come back with more layers, I've decided to come in now and start adding the splashes to the body and the outer areas of the canvas. So I'm using a combination of brushes and what are they called, cotton buds and what have you, to create the different size shapes. And I'm also adding contrasting colours to the area as well, so they're just not all white spots that I'm adding. I'm actually adding other colours like the yellow to the green, darker blue to the light blue areas, etc, etc around there to give the splashes. And then once the splashes are dry, and then coming back and adding more detail to the face. So where we need more highlights and lowlights, I'm now coming back in and adding those. And again, checking the image on the viewfinder of the camera to see how the colours are looking in the viewfinder, and I will take another photograph at the end just so that I can have a look to see where still needs some work, because sometimes when you're a little bit too close to a piece you can't necessarily see where things are not quite right or where you need to add more paint. So again, I'm just checking that the colours are right with my reference photo, and then just adding those colours in. Because again, like I say, using different colours when you're painting like this, you feel that those colours are not quite right. For instance, me adding pink to the nose and purple, it doesn't feel quite right, but then when you take a step back and view it through your camera lens, you can then see that yeah, that is working better. Well, I hope you enjoyed this time-lapse style video. I will be creating more videos of my art because I do work in a variety of mediums, and I would love to share them with you. So I would love to hear your comments on me sharing more of my art with you. So until next time, bye for now.